Okay, we are live. So, hello and welcome everyone to this session. I have one of the one of the celebrities of Microsoft Project and Project Server to talk with us today. Even the session is very interesting. First of all, about the speaker, if you have been using Project or Project Server and you don't know Gary Sheffield, then you probably have not been using it the right way. So I'm pretty sure at least everybody I meet has learned Project Server through his books. He's also a very famous consultant and trainer. He's going to talk about, he and I had a conversation. So he's going to talk about a sneaky way of using visibility projects for smart work management. I don't know too much details about it, but he has some very cool demos as well. So I ask everybody to tune in, get some popcorn, get some food, whatever, and just watch this session. So Gary, it's all yours.
Well, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much, Prasanna. That was quite nice. And I'm very pleased for this to be my 15th year as or my 15th MVP award. So I'm very proud of that. Proud to be part of this along with Prasanna and many other MVPs and other experts. I think this amazing job that Prasanna has done getting this organized. It's, I think, a superb accomplishment. Anyway, so now that we've sufficiently stroked each other and complimented each other, I want to thank you to our sponsors, of course, all of those who made this possible. So I just want to talk a minute about Project Server, Project Online, you know, the whole family of products and what we're looking at. Of course, we all know that this is a portfolio and project management information system, the PPMIS, if you will. And it works because it's a central repository for projects and resources. In many ways, though, it's a 50,000 watt amplifier because it provides transparency. And if you're putting bad data into the system, it's really bad coming out of Project Server or Project Online because everybody can see it. It lights up in views. It's not a project that's in your lower left-hand drawer anymore. So it can be a scary place. It can be an intimidating place for people. But existentially, what we want to keep in mind is that this is a modeling tool, that this is crystal ball technology, that what we're doing here is trying to predict the future. And humans do that rather badly. So we got to give ourselves a break every now and then, you know, not worrying about leveling the 0.3 hours overage in one day. You know what I'm saying? And I watch people go nuts about that. But I want you most of all to think about Project as a modeling suite, Project Online, and Project Server. And you have to strip away some of your other thoughts about the tool and look at it through different perspectives, not just through the portfolio and project management perspective. But this is a little piece of it that I'm going to show you. So why do people implement this tool? Well, the grand prize here for most companies is getting their arms around demand and or capacity, hopefully both. The big grand #1 blue ribbon prize is to know your resource capacity by role, to know what your work demand is by role. And along the way, you gain visibility, you improve team collaboration, you can establish governance, and you can ultimately define and track KPIs and start measuring performance. But this #1 goal here overrides more than anything. Although there are plenty of people that use this to just track progress of things and never get into work and capacity and demand, by far, most of the larger implementations I've seen, this is one of the goals. And if it's not an immediate goal, it's a future goal, it's a wish, it's a desire, an aspiration that almost everybody wants to achieve. So my story today is really about the tight integration with Project Server and SharePoint. Project Server some people don't realize, is the world's largest SharePoint app. It is. I mean, not just in terms of complexity, but in terms of absolute use across the world. So it's the most popular SharePoint app. It's certainly the most complex. It lives in SharePoint just like Excel services and Access services. It's a service app. It is 100% dependent on SharePoint. And with 2013 and 2016 project in this generation, and I look at these two as a single generation at this point very much. I mean, even though there's a lot of changes in 2016, under the hood, on the instrumentation part that faces the user experience isn't a whole lot different. Anyway, so I look at this as a generation, and this is a very exciting generation because of the deep integration with SharePoint. So let's talk about, the relationship with SharePoint for a minute. And this is the way I like to characterize it. And I've been around to watch this whole relationship start, flourish, and develop. So during Project Server 2003 era, and boy, that was a long release cycle, they were dating. Of course, prior to 2003, they didn't even know each other. They were barely aware of each other. Somebody down another hall in another building. Now, by 2007, they started living together. So they were pretty involved with each other at this point. And they had a pretty good domestic partnership, but it wasn't a big commitment. In 2010, they took the plunge and got married. And in a way, I think they're making children in this generation. Although I haven't been able to convince the product team in Redmond to recognize the legitimacy of these offspring that I'm going to show you today. I think they're pretty cool, and it solves a number of problems that people typically have. So the deepest, most incredible grand part of the 2013-2016 integration with SharePoint is the whole ideation portfolio management story in my mind, especially because I include in this the entire architecture and in very particular, the whole project detail page stage architecture as well, which was introduced in 2010. But in 2013, we got SharePoint Designer. And all of a sudden, these workflows are approachable. And everybody should be doing workflow because that's our opportunity to add governance to our workflow, our system. And that's one of the things that people miss when they're implementing Project and Project Server is they fail to provide governance for their users. How are we going to use this thing? If you look at, any of you look at my books, they're humongous, they're 1,000-page books. And they're heavy. And not everybody needs to know everything in them. If you're a consultant, you certainly do, but people who are using the product need to know how our company's going to use it, or our division, or our department, whatever working group that is. And so much, you can accomplish so much with governance using workflow that if you're not doing that, you're scratching what's possible with assisting your users getting their jobs done. So to me, this is the deepest, grandest integration that the new generation has brought us, along with SharePoint Designer workflows. And probably the weakest are called visibility projects. Really, nobody uses these because no one's really seen a reason to connect a SharePoint list into Project Server to bring those tasks in when they come in and distort the demand in the system. There's no better reason to track them in SharePoint than Project at this point, except that Project you can preserve real work values. So what happens is For every day of duration, if you put a resource on a task in a SharePoint list and pull it into project, you're going to get 8 hours worth of work. That's all that SharePoint can do, because Microsoft has chosen not to sync work with a SharePoint list. Most undoubtedly because of the challenge with time phasing those values. So they don't even sync the summary value of work, and they don't give you a way to do it. So that's a limitation here in syncing projects. So that's another feature that came in with 2013 is this, in 2010, the ability to sync project to SharePoint list, as well as add these visibility projects. So what I'm going to show you, and they're both underutilized. The project syncing to a SharePoint list is a wonderful thing. I must tell you, I personally use this with customers who really don't know a lot about project management and project, and it's a great way to get them started doing something, especially with manually scheduled tasks. We don't care about work, so it's a baby step. But we can get rather sophisticated with taking advantage of and exploiting these features in a kind of cool way. So what's been happening is most people, when it comes to visibility projects, they just see red. So they're not using them. So let me give you a use case. I am a technology manager in the School of Performing Arts. I have multiple facilities and on multiple campuses. I have to deal with preventive maintenance on audio, video, and lighting installations throughout all of these performing arts facilities. I have a single tech resource pool on these campuses that do project work, preventive maintenance work. By the way, for those of you with project management minds on, notice I made this small PM so it would be easier for you not to confuse that with project management. I'm talking about preventive maintenance here, okay? Projects, firefighting. So, you know, they have the same challenge everybody else does. All these people, I need them for everything. So yeah, we're going to use this project server system. How do I represent this kind of work in there? And you could think, you know, similar scenarios, not just preventive maintenance work, but maintenance work in general, maybe help tickets. These are continuously plaguing little problems that we know are out there that are sapping away our resources, especially within certain resource groups that have a lot of firefighting responsibility, that's sucking away their availability. It's placing demand off the radar. And that's been a great failing for us. So I need to count in that demand. I need to track the progress on this work because I need to understand the impact of deferring the preventive maintenance. You know, if a task isn't performed, if it's missed 1 or 2 or 3 cycles in a row, maybe I'm at risk for a failure during a major performance. I can't have the lights going out when we have a big celebrity in the house performing. So we also have this need for techs to update PM assignments on their mobile devices. And our customer, like many, doesn't want a third-party app. They just don't want it. I don't care if it's only $5, if it's only $1, if it's $10. It's not about that. The application should do it by itself. Well, Project up until now really hasn't had a mobile story. You had to go with a third-party app, and there's some good ones out there. And by the way, we heard recently through announcements that Microsoft has made on the roadmap, and things that John said, that they're planning on filling some of these gaps by acquisition, that they've actually purchased some partner add-ons to fill these gaps. But in the meantime, those of you using 2013 and current versions can work around that and add a mobile story here. Not a real sophisticated one, not like the products that these partners do, but I'm really looking for a simple mobile story here, because I just want the techs to be able to go in there and touch check boxes and just note that they did this stuff while they're out in the facilities doing the work. So how do I do this? This is the sneaky visibility project thing. So let me switch to fire up Microsoft Project, and I am going to work locally. I'm going to open up an audio detail template I created, an MPT. So as you can see, what I've done is I've created bi-monthly cycles, twice monthly cycles, not bi-monthly, but twice monthly maintenance cycles with the same tasks in order to, and they're all manually scheduled tasks, as you can see. So in order to, manually scheduled tasks are a beautiful thing here. This is the kind of schedule that a resource manager type is going to manage, not a project manager type. Project manager type would want a predictive schedule here. What we're trying to do is get some intelligent loading. We want to show the demand. We want to see the tasks that are getting done. We want to gain the visibility, and we want to know what our deferred preventive maintenance story is as we go along. So the resource manager, to create this, all I have to do is, after we get the list, and the resource manager, she provided the list to me, all I have to do is show her how to cut and paste inside a project. These are really basic skills for my resource manager to be able to manage her demand on her preventive maintenance team, or in her tech team. So as you can see, just simple cut and paste. I can create others. I drag and drop the dates. Everything's manual, and I don't have to worry about it. This is like the most basic way to use Project you could possibly imagine. So what I'm going to do is save this, and I am going to sync to a new SharePoint site in my my sandbox. And oops. I want to put this in my PWA site collection. This is very important. In order for you to create a visibility project, you must be within the Share Project Web App site collection. So it's very important that you make it a subsite of the PWA site collection. I am going to call this Avery Hall Audio PM, and I'm going to click that save button. Now this could take a moment, just depending on how my tenant's behaving at the moment, whether everybody in the virtual conference is breaking the Microsoft Project Online Farms. Who knows what's going on? Or it could be the Star Wars trailer breaking the internet continuously, of course. So you can see this takes a moment. This is actually project in SharePoint without project server. This is how it works. That was fun. So project is now opening the SharePoint site to prove, hey, it's there. So at this point, what I want to do is harvest this link, because I want to send it to my team members. And I just happen to have an email ready to go here. I'm going to send it to my other email address so I can pick that up later on my phone and drill into it. So you can see now we have the SharePoint site with the task list. It's telling me that November 1 to 15, that cycle is due. If I look at the tasks, I can easily see the task list as well. But what I'm going to do now is go to PWA, and let me make sure, come back to project first and close this. Beautiful. And let me exit out, because the next time I want to use project, I'll want to connect to Project Web App. So now I'm going to navigate to the Project Center, where I shall click the Project tab and use this strange animal that nobody seems to use very much, and add a SharePoint site. As you can see, I have a Project Center full of SharePoint sites. How do you know that? Because the double icon, the special icon, lets you know that these are all SharePoint task lists. I've been playing around with them a lot lately. So I click the Add SharePoint Sites, and I am going to select my Avery Hall Audio PM that I just created. Notice that it knows it's already syncing to the project. Now this takes a minute. This and sometimes, just for fun, if the cloud is being slow, I'll go to the manage queue jobs page and watch it spawn the jobs, just like kind of watching paint dry. Yeah, it's real exciting stuff. Let's take a shot at refreshing here. I just want to make sure that it got created. Avery Hall Audio, it's there. Wonderful. Now, what I'm going to do, so now I have a project that's syncing with project on the side. That project lives in that SharePoint site. However, this is now connected to Project Web App. So some of you probably, this might be the first time you're ever seeing one of these. I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to open up Project, and this time I'm going to go ahead and connect to my sandbox. And I am going to go to my recent projects. You can see where it's saved. If you can read the URL, the site assets library in that SharePoint site, that's a hidden library. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. It's going to download. Syncing. Now, notice something I didn't point out before, that I have this little local custom field, text one that I call pwork, which is my preserved work values for all of these. In case something bad happens to this, like someone does something in SharePoint to edit this project and blows my work values, and that can happen. That's a little flaw here, potential flaw. I can easily restore them. So I want you to understand why I do that technique. Once the tasks are completed, I'm not so interested in the history, because I'm not really tracking hours here. I'm really tracking done and not done, but I do have reliable time studies for all this work. I know how long it takes. It's work we do twice a month, every month, month after month. So there's no reason to track any more than that, but I do need to show that demand. So that's the sneaky trick that I'm using. So at this point, I do a save as, and this time I'm going to save to PWA. And you can see I don't have a choice about the name because it's already part of PA. And notice that it notices Project recognizes that I have a resource. My name is in here as a resource. And I also have one more resource in here. And I'll just say yes, a generic resource that it'll automatically map for me. And I always get this for some reason, and I never know why. And I'm not in an enterprise view, but this is an error message that you would get if you were trying to make an edit to an enterprise view, which this is not. So I really don't know why this comes up. You can just safely ignore it. So now this project is living in the Microsoft project database. The next step, normally, and I'm not normal, don't ever accuse me of being normal. I'm not normal, but the next step for a normal person would be to go to server settings page, the PWA settings page, the server settings link, or the PWA settings link. We have two names for everything now. The next step would be to go to the connected SharePoint sites and activate the enterprise features and promote it into a full enterprise project. Meanwhile, right now, I have a project saved in the project server database syncing to a SharePoint list. And that's an interesting state. This is the illegitimate child. This is the illegitimate child that I was talking about in my slides. So these are offsprings. These are hybrids. So again, look at my technique for assigning this resource. Now notice that's a generic resource. There's no real resource on SharePoint for this to sync with, and that's on purpose. Because I'm using a generic, and actually I'm using a generic team resource. So this resource, I didn't mean to do that. Put it here, because that will, as everybody knows, will mess up my loading. jittery a little bit with the Google Hangouts display here. So again, a simple dumb user technique for assigning resources works perfectly for me. Notice I show the duration in hours because I want to show you that this 1 hour, this half-hour task, if I let SharePoint do this without project, would be 96 hours of loading. And that's why people don't use these, because they can't control this. Now I can control this as long as I don't take that last step. And it means I'm always going to live with this little warning, but who cares? Now I'm going to save this. Notice it gives me the error message that it can't sync the resource audio team. Well, if it did, if it synced the resource, it would blow this whole plan of mine because those work values would go kablooey. And there'd be no way I could ever, because every time it's synced back from SharePoint, it would clobber them. So I don't want a real resource at SharePoint. I just need access to mark those off. I really don't need an assignment there, but I do want these assignments in Project Server. So now, when I return to Project Web App and I visit the Resource Center, hopefully I'm not going too fast here. So I've pre-selected the audio team. I want to see the audio team's resource assignments. Bam. And I have all of my assignments now visible for those 2-week cycles in Project Web App. And I've grouped by start date just to make this easy to see what's going on. And of course, that's now available in resource. It'll show up the demand and availability views. I'll be using this demand along with the rest of the demand on the team. But here we can see that our preventive maintenance demand, I haven't created demand for anything else. So you can see that it does spread this very nicely. So I've got, if this is 5 people or 3 people sharing approximately 30 hours of work every 2 weeks, it's pretty cool. I think I may have some duplication in here. I'm not exactly sure, but get it? I mean, what the beautiful thing is that these work values are neatly preserved. Now, the next beautiful thing is the ability to update this stuff from the phone. So let's try that part of the demo. Where's my phone? All right, let me see if I can get it to come up. And I'm going to have to go to my email and get that link that my boss just sent me, which will be down in this folder here. And of course, I'm going to ultimately want to pin this to my start menu. But here is, and I meant to go into send the link all the way down to the task list. That was my mistake. So where I really want to land is right here. So normally, I harvested that link a little bit wrong. But now notice the opportunity I've got here. So I can expand this, first of all, and as I'm going through each room, I can tick off my tasks. So let's say I've got through all of that, and then I get to this job where I have to test the Crestron, and you know what? I don't know. I need the manual for that. Well, if that manual's in the site here, it's real easy for me to go grab my manual. So look at the opportunity I've got here. And I've got a beautiful mobile story in SharePoint right out of the box, no special tricks, and it just works. So let's minimize this for a moment, and let's go back to our project, and let's sync. Why isn't this syncing? All right, let's try this again, folks. This should work. Nothing like messing up your demo. There we go. So there's our completion sync. So, and you know, my hours are still good. If I go in and do crazy stuff with these editing this in SharePoint, it could clobber these values. But if everybody just does what they're told, just checks them off within, that's all they want to do, then I know how many hours of deferred maintenance I have when the cycle ends and work isn't done, and I can track that like a backlog. So I know how to prioritize future cycles. You know, I know that it's inevitable I'm not going to get it all done. Now think of other ways I can use this. I can use this to track loading for help desk work. If each one of these were a help ticket with that had gone through perhaps it goes through workflow to get into project or into SharePoint. So there's lots of potential applications. Now there's another technique I can use with this. The obstacles that Microsoft puts in my way right now is that I can't use this in a master project until it's fully promoted, which is unfortunate because it would be really nice to be able to do cross-project links with these. That would be pretty exciting. However, what I can do, I can't do cross-project links. I can't make it use a master project, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank project. And I'm going to set this to another manually scheduled deal. And for instance, I'm going to create a couple tasks here. November 1 to 15, Avery Audio PM. And this one I'll call 16 to 30. And set my start dates. My manual here, once again, going off to sophisticated manual scheduling here. Notice that, you know, with these weeks starting on Sunday, ending on Sunday, that's why you get a little bit of strange work distribution across the loading. Same thing happens with just a plain SharePoint list. So actually, I'm in the wrong month here. Duh. I don't know how I managed that. Okay, so next thing I want to do is put in the percent complete here. And what I'm going to do is switch windows, come here, and grab my percent complete, copy, and I'm going to use the old-fashioned Olay link, which remarkably have proven to be very durable in certain contexts, especially when they're in the database, when they're in files. So when I paste, paste special, paste link, And I can do the same now for the other one. And these will update when I open them automatically, and I can pull progress lines into here. So if I wanted to build myself a little dashboard here, I could. Now, what are the other possibilities that where we could go from here? What if I took the loading off the project that's syncing with the SharePoint list, and I put it on up here? Well, that would add it to the potential time reporting stream. And if I needed it up there, it would also give me summary loading. It wouldn't give me the detailed tasks, but I'd still have that in SharePoint and project. Excuse me. So you can see there's a lot of fun things we can do here. So if I save this now as a project in Project Web App, I could call it the Audio Master. This could end up being showing, one-stop shopping where I could see the whole shoot and match instead of building a view in the Project Center, or I could filter them out of the Project Center. Anyway, this is what happens. I start choking when I've been talking too long. So this gives you a little taste of the techniques that I wanted to show you today. If I now return to Project Web App and refresh my Project Center, I'll have my, I didn't publish my master project. I'd still need to do that for it to show up here. Okay, so, save and close out my my other project for it to show up in the progress line to show up here. But we know it's there. You've seen it inside a project. So let me switch to the demo. So other possibilities and way you could potentially use that. Well, the linking thing I just showed you, what if that were a server rack that somebody had to build, and there were 100 tasks in there, and I didn't want to have them in my project schedule, all I wanted to do is roll up that progress. You could use the technique I just showed you. Other types of routine workloads, like I was starting to allude, a help desk, other maintenance requests, maybe slightly other, larger than, a half-hour project, but maybe it's a few days or a 3-day project, but mini projects to fix things. So that kind of stuff. And I want to hear any ideas from anybody in the audience. So I want to open it up for questions now, because that is really pretty much everything that I had to show you here. So remember, it's a modeling tool set. There's no rules here. You can do things with this. Don't be afraid to try.
So thank you, Gary. I do not see any questions in the chat, but I had a question for myself.
Sure.
You have been talking about this and using this, I'm pretty sure, for some of your clients. How stable is this process?
I'm just trying to stop the screen share so I can stop the mirrors. Yeah, there we go. Like I say, I found it stable in use. I've used it. I used this technique with one customer, and it worked out well. I don't. It's just the ability to introduce the demand into the puzzle. There's so much work demand that falls off the radar scope. With the project managers end up trying to estimate max units. Well, I'll book them at 70% because I know that they're going to get pulled away for firefighters. So why not really look at this stuff in a valuable way? The other problem is, how do we keep what's mint? The other big factor here was the mobile story, because waiting till the end of the day for someone to log in somewhere and update this was just not getting it done. So having it available on the phone and not spending money on extra products, those are high demand requirements. So how do we get it there? I got it there for them. So
right, That was a very cool demo actually, to get it on the phone and being able to report progress on support work and but still consume it in Microsoft Project.
Yeah,
So
well, more importantly, feeding it intelligently into the demand story
exactly. Right.
in the server. And that's, I would love for Microsoft to say, hey, let's go with this and let's enable this a little bit more, because this is pretty cool all by itself. It's not, we know there are lots of really cool things coming up on the horizon, and Microsoft's making some really cool investments now and trying to get the work management story go very broad. But for those of us who are using Project Server as a demand and capacity management system, this is really cool.
Right. I think so. I think we have all been there where how do we model support work,
Right.
trying to come up with ways. So I think this is very cool.
I mean, it takes a little. But the nice thing is that there's very little scheduling skill involved in this. It's using project
Right.
like Excel, so you're
Mm,
teaching some people some basic stuff, and there is, like I said, the opportunity to clobber the work values. That's why I have them preserved in the
exactly.
project file. So that happens. That happens, and you can decide: do you want to keep an evergreen project and delete stuff, or make it inactive, or do you want to do quarterly rollovers or something like that? There's no rules here, right? Anything will work.
Right. And this will, because it affects the resource capacity, it will automatically roll up into portfolio analysis, which is where the real value is.
Right. It'll show up in the demand will show up in the analysis. Now, interestingly, that's a good question. I should have mentioned. I used a team resource. Did I mention that?
And
So it doesn't generate capacity. It just
right.
generates. But you could use a standard generic.
Hmm.
Just don't use somebody who's don't got a log on, because that'll just clobber everything.
Right. Right. Good. So, excuse me. I don't see any more questions in the chat session. So, if we want to conclude this session at this point, I think that would be okay.
Okay, because I really don't have anything more than that. So okay.
All right. So, thank you, Gary. Thank you for your time. I know it's getting evening for you. So, we'll march on for the rest of the sessions. And again, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. If
All right.
there's
Bye.
anybody watching.
No, there are people. They're just not asking questions. Excuse me.